Hi, Murtaza. Thank you so much for taking out time for this interview. For the viewers, may we request you to please share your journey, your story in your own words?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Murtaza, originally from India in a place called Nasik near Mumbai. I've been in Nasik almost all my life. So coming to US was a big change for me. I
Mhm.
have a background in electrical engineering. I worked for Siemens in product development after my graduation, which was way back in 2008. I worked for Siemens in around 4 years and then pivoted wanted to do something different, so started my own business. Was mostly my business in India was a supply chain company focused towards delivering capital goods and consumables to regional industries, and I did that for around 6.5, almost 7 years before again deciding to pivot, do something different. And that's when I had this I was exploring these ideas of what my next move is going to be. And being about 7 years out of the industry, I decided to go to B school because I thought that would be a good way to, catch up on some of the things that I might have missed on.
Okay.
Was really interested in, and seeing this shift in data-driven analytics, decision-making, defining, and becoming a big part of how we conduct business in the future. So wanted to get exposure to that, learn that as much as possible. So I went through the MBA route, came here to US, did my MBA from Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. And I'd always had this passion and interest for e-commerce. And so I decided to join Amazon after MBA, just to pursue my interest there in that e-commerce space.
All right. That's interesting. And it's quite an inspiring journey. So, in your opinion, what are a few factors or actions you took that made all the difference?
Yeah, so I agree with you. It was like for me, it has always been about challenging myself and pushing myself to the next level, right? And never being satisfied with the status quo. And that has been a driving factor in a lot of decisions that I've made in my life. And when you are challenging status quo, you will have to take risks, whether it is, your B school application, or whether it is just a job change, or even when you're running your own business, right? Every day, every decision you make will come with certain risks.
True.
And I've seen a lot of people, they are afraid to take risks and are afraid to venture out into an uncertain environment, right? Like coming to a US, relocating a new city, coming into times when COVID hit us. Nobody knew what it's going to happen, unprecedented times, right? And COVID has taught as a lesson to all of us that no matter what we do, there will be these uncertain situations in our life. So I think, the biggest thing is don't be afraid to take risks. Obviously, secure your bases, put in the hard work and the effort, take calculated risks, as I would say. But again, don't be afraid of venturing out into the uncertain and taking risks. And, even when you have detractors, right? A lot of people told me that, it's too late for you to go to a B school now. I was probably about 4 or 5 years higher than the average, age tenure for my B school group. But as long as you believe in yourself, as long as you feel that you have that drive and that humility to go into a B school, and probably, be a couple of years over all your peers, and still have that humility of learning new things, reaching out to them, asking questions, and also sharing and contributing from your experience. I think you should take the call and move forward with it. Again, understand the risks, right? It's going to be different if you are into that as compared to, somebody who's coming in with 3 or 4 years of experience. It's going to be a very different journey,
Hmm.
but as long as you have the drive for it, as long as you understand the risk and you are able to put in the effort that it takes, I think you should jump into it.
Absolutely. That is so true. So, with the benefit of hindsight, what are a few mistakes you believe you committed in the process?
Yeah, I think one of the things that if I could go back and change, I would have started a little early, right? So I probably spent a little bit longer in my business than I should have. I should have taken that decision earlier. It was a tough decision, so I spent a lot of time deliberating on it. So I started my MBA journey in 2016 and then finally came to US in 2018 for the class of 2020. And even before starting that MBA journey in 2016, GMAT prep, things like that, I was deliberating on that for a couple of years, right? So I lost out on some time there. If I could change, I could just go back and take that decision earlier, which would help me, get a couple of years of head start. The other mistake probably I did was, and I think a lot of people make this in their MBA journey, is the classic planning fallacy that we have. I anticipated, probably a year to do GMAT. It almost, took me like a year and a half, right? So again, give yourself a head start, have enough time so that, if things, don't go as well as you plan, you have, more time to continue the prep or even give multiple attempts to GMAT, right? I did 3 attempts for my GMAT, and I did not earlier anticipate that into my planning in terms of, taking GMAT and then doing my application. So it put me off by a year. So that was one thing that I would advise: start early, give yourself enough time, have contingency plans in case, things don't go well. And GMAT, although no matter how gifted you are, it can get pretty challenging, both from aspects of like doing the prep for it, the rigor of the exam, and also actually going and doing the test, which comes with its own, psychological and mental stress. So considering all that in mind, just starting ahead is good. From an applications perspective, I think, using the strategy of what works best for you, right? And actually this also applies to your GMAT prep, right? Not everybody has a different style. So you should try out different mediums, whether it's books, online prep materials, one-on-one coaching, things like that. But again, pivot quickly. If something is not working for you, just move on and go to the next form. And once you find what works for you, just stick with it. And same thing for application process, right? There are lots of different ways you can do it, but pivot quickly, identify what works for you, and then stick with that for the rest of the process. And that's pretty much, from an MBA application and prep perspective, I would say.
Right. So going back to your GMAT preparation phase, what were the main resources that you used?
Yeah, so I started off with books, right? I had a couple of books that I scouted through. It helped to get a good understanding, but I knew this was not going to get me to the level of rigor and level of practice that I needed, especially being out of, school and academics for almost 10 years at that point.
Right.
So I started with books. I switched very quickly to online, and then I spent a lot of time trying out different courses online, free resources. I also did a couple of paid resources, mostly for verbal and English, which I thought was the most help that I needed. And then after doing all of that, I realized that this is only helping me in bits and pieces and not really giving me like a comprehensive structure or plan, which would help me identify opportunities in all areas and then come up with a cadence and a regular plan of how I wanted to approach and close those gaps. So that's when, through my online research, I came across Experts Global, and I'm glad that I came across that. The things that I liked about Experts Global specifically was, again, it was a very comprehensive plan, right from included everything, right? So one-stop shop, which had GMAT prep, all different like aspects within that GMAT prep, mock tests, interview prep, and application support. I think that was a big help for me. I knew I could use this resource throughout and not have to bounce between different platforms and different people. And especially at that point, this was almost a year into my prep, so I had lost some time, and now I wanted to make up for some of it by sticking to one source and then doing whatever was expected of me once I had that structured plan. So I during the initial conversations and through my research, I looked at what was the help. I really liked the rigor of the program. I did look at some of the sample videos that you had. So I really enjoyed the style of teaching. And then on top of that, the personal touch that was there, just a weekly check-ins to make sure I was tracking on my progress, helping out with any barriers that I had during the prep. And then also just following up on making sure that I stayed and hit the the milestones that I was supposed to hit. So just having that checkpoint was very helpful throughout the entire GMAT prop process. And then one thing that worked for me, and I think anybody else can also use this, is just having this strategy halfway through your prep on identifying what your balance is going to be in, mostly I would say verbal versus math here, right? So I knew that I'd almost hit my peak in math, and it would take a lot of effort to push beyond that. But I knew there was a lot of opportunity in verbal. So I almost stopped working at my math. I was just doing like regular practice there, but I pushed really hard on verbal because I realized that was an easier way for me to push the needle in the right direction. So I think that was something that I could talk to somebody at Experts Global, convey, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think of this, right? Get a second check on that, and then start really pursuing that strategy, putting more time on verbal versus math, and then using that same concept when I was actually doing my mock test. Again, time is very valuable there. So understanding that, hey, this question, I'm not going to be able to do it. Let me just skip and move on to the next one, right? So just having that strategy was very helpful during my GMAT prep. So before Experts Global, I took a test in August 2016. I scored a 690. So again, not a bad score, but I knew it wasn't going to be cutting out for me, especially if you're looking at like top 20 or top 25 school, given our demographics, right?
Yes.
So I knew I had to push harder on that one. And I knew I could use, very targeted specific guidance on identifying my weak spots and giving me the right help that I needed. So after that, I started doing my Experts Global Prep. I consistently worked through the entire prep material. The material was really good, so I did not really need much help following up, but just checking in on the progress was good. Once I did that, I completed the course. I started taking my GMAT, and I started consistently scoring between that 710 and 740 range after the first couple of mock tests. And once I did that, that's when I knew, hey, this is the good time to schedule a test. I scheduled another GMAT exam. I think that was in July of 2017 is when I applied. And then it was also the day when there was this deluge in Mumbai. So I went to Mumbai for my GMAT. It was raining extremely heavy. I was hoping they would cancel the test, but they did not. So I was almost like soaking wet when I went to the test center. Could not really focus on the exam. I knew, it was just a bad day for me. And I scored like a 650 on that test, but it did not deter me because I knew that this is not a true reflection of my, abilities. It was just more of, one of that bad days that happened to me.
Right.
And the interesting and funny thing is they actually canceled all the afternoon sessions because it became so bad.
All right.
But I was on the morning session, so I still took the test and I got the score. And I remember very clearly, it took me almost like 15 hours to get back home for like a 3-hour journey because all the roads were closed and it was pretty bad. But I came back home and then immediately, scheduled a test 15 days later. And that's when I scored my 740, which I used to apply to all the B schools.
That's amazing. It's truly inspiring how you did not give up and you were determined to get your targeted score and you did achieve it. So that's really
Yes.
nice.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, never giving up, really understanding where you are. GMAT can be tricky, can throw challenges at you, but, just having that determination and making, understanding and believing in yourself. Hey, I've done this like 5, 7 times in the past in all my mock tests. No reason why I cannot do, right? If it doesn't happen first time or second time, don't worry. It will happen. It will happen the next time you take it.
Absolutely. So, what would you like to say about your experience and learnings from managing the MBA application timeline?
Yeah, MBA application timelines can be tricky. And I think, one of the mistakes that I did was I selected my schools obviously, based on, hey, what are your dream schools? What are your reach schools? What are your safe schools, right? Things like that. So I did have my basket, but I did not very specifically and strategically plan in advance, if I have a couple of applications that are due in the same week, right? And I did not have that clearly laid out. The way I worked was, hey, this is the timeline, this application is first, so let me work on that, knock it off, and then move to the next one. So instead of parallelly working for two or three schools, I think it was helpful in a certain way that I was able to 100% focus on my application for that school before I focused on the next one. But I also had weeks where I had two or three applications and where probably I could not give enough time to the level that I would have wanted.
Okay.
Right. So mapping it out earlier and identifying those key weeks where I was going to be stretched would have helped to pull, a couple of applications, start working on them earlier in
Right.
not so busy weeks so that, I could actually focus more and spend more time on those applications for those weeks. So, but I think having Experts Global was very helpful. I know I couldn't have managed it, especially given I was still working at that time. I was actively working on, once I had the GMAT score, I knew, my plans of going to the US were almost certain. And so I was actively working on transitioning my business, building a succession plan for that. So it actually got way more busier for me. So having somebody to help in, get some advice on my applications, also provide some very good and pointed feedback on what I should and should not do, or how I should present this story versus not, was very helpful. So I think, it again, the same classic case of planning fallacy was here as well. It takes more time to write an essay than you anticipate it will, right? So again, just having that buffer in your planning would be very helpful. I knew I had to miss, at one point for in 1 week of my application, I had three, and I just took a call that I'm not going to do my third application because, I won't have the time to really justify the quality of work that was going in for that application. So I did only two, but that was definitely a lesson learned, especially if you're targeting like 7 or 9 applications, depending on, what your strategy is. It's good to just plan ahead, identifying any crucial or critical weeks that you might have more than one application, and then work on it earlier.
Right. So, would you like to describe your interview experience with the B school?
Yeah, interview experience was fairly straightforward for me. I know there are a lot of stories outside on the internet if you're searching, right? Some of them are good, some of them are like horror stories. For me, fortunately, it was like a pretty straightforward process, very simple, standard interview questions. I didn't get a lot of curveballs. I did like 5 interviews to different schools, and none of them, all were positive experience. I did not have like, a very hard or tough, like a curveball question, which was mainly asked to throw me off. Again, it might differ from school to school, but my experience was very positive. And from my experience, what I can say is interview is just like, a confirmation process from them. They've already like, made up their mind 80 to 90%, if you are getting an invite, right? And then interview is just to make sure that there are no additional red flags that is not being captured in the application process, right? So as long as you keep it simple, authentic, follow the star format, have your basic answers ready, your career goal, short term, long term, plan A, plan B, things like that. How are you going to add value to the community? So as long as you have these basic questions, your basic star stories, behavioral answers ready, I don't think it's something that you need to worry about a lot. It's very reasonable. I think it's just doing a final confirmation on the decision that has already been made. And I did some mock interviews with Experts Global, but apart from that, that was the only thing I did. I did not spend a lot of time on interview prep, apart from, just getting my basic stuff together.
All right. Okay. So, can you tell us about your MBA experience?
Yeah, so my MBA experience was very good. As I described, I came down to Carnegie Mellon. I had a few admits. My final choice came down between Rice in Houston versus Carnegie Mellon. I had a full ride from a scholarship perspective at Rice versus Carnegie Mellon. I had I did not have a full ride. I did have some scholarship, but it wasn't a full ride. So it came down to these two schools.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to get into a small class MBA because that's, I like more social interaction, knowing almost all my fellow classmates, interacting, with them in whether it's class setting or social events, things like that. So I knew I always wanted to get to a smaller MBA program, smaller class size MBA program. I think what really sealed the deal for Carnegie Mellon was that extreme focus on analytics, data-driven decision making, opportunity to go out and take classes in whether it's, the School of Computer Science or the Heinz College just right across the street on whether it's public policy or any other thing. So that's how I finalized my decision. It was a very good experience, I would say, more enriching than I would thought it would be. Obviously learned a lot, not only about business and data analytics, which I wanted to, but also a lot of other things in general, apart from the things that I hoped I would get. A very strong community, very good network. I think that's the biggest takeaway that stays with you for the rest of your life is the network that you build, the friendships and the relationships that you build that are going to be able to help and support you throughout your career. So I think that was a great thing.
Uh-huh.
Graduating in 2020 was tough because of COVID.
Right.
Um, I made a wise decision to graduate a semester early. So I actually graduated in March. So that was good. So I did not do any virtual schooling because April, the last semester was all virtual. So for me, I think I took the most value out of, doing the in-person schooling. And the other good thing is a lot of our recruitment activities were done, prior to February in that August to February timeframe. So that was also good from a recruitment perspective. There's a lot of discussion around ROI of an MBA school. Like you can always put numbers, right, and calculate the ROI, but there is no number you can put to the intangible things that you gain, whether it is the relationships, the friendships, or just a personal growth and shift in perspective of how you approach life or how you approach your career decisions and goals, right? So my only advice is obviously look at ROI. It's important to understand how you're going to fund the program, what your return is going to look like, but also consider a lot of intangible things that you cannot bake into the math or the calculation there.
Right, absolutely. It's quite a wholesome experience, I believe.
Yes, definitely, 100%.
Right. So, can you tell us more about your journey post MBA? Like, how did the entire pre application phase and your MBA journey contribute to your growth post MBA?
Yeah, I think GMAT is a very strategic test, right? And it helps you prepare a mindset, whether it's in terms of getting, your basic math stuff together, if you're going to a STEM program like Carnegie Mellon, and just in general, having that strategic approach towards solving problem is a key thing you need, not only for your MBA, but also beyond. Sadly, I would say, and it's changing, the Indian curriculum, growing up does not focus as much on this as it should, right? And I hope it's changing for the better now. But I think having that experience through the MBA prep definitely helps you navigate and makes it easier in your MBA journey, especially if you're coming to a different country. It's a lot of change at one point to take into, and then having these experiences, whether it's through GMAT and, doing a lot of reflection through your and introspection during your essays, also helps you identify, hey, what your strengths are, what's your opportunities, right? And then you can leverage that when you actually go into the program, right? So leverage your strengths, focus on your opportunities, decide your curriculum on where you need to go, what you need to focus on. And then the last thing I would say is just keeping an open mind, right? If you're coming from unorthodox background like I did, I think it's important to just come in with a very open mindset, explore different opportunities, right? I had my career goals, right? But I was very open on what I wanted to do, right? Whether it's going into finance or marketing or product management, right? Things like that. I attended and joined a lot of clubs in school just to get an exposure of what it is like, right? In terms of different career paths. And I interviewed for a lot of different roles as well, which allowed me the flexibility to make a choice on what I wanted to do. One tip or advice I'll say is that, a lot of people go into MBA assuming that it's a ticket to going into a completely different career path. Well, that might be the case. No, it doesn't happen as easily, right? Just getting into an MBA program is not a ticket to getting into a product management, right? Coming from an operations background, right? It's always going to be tough. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but it's tough, right? So I had a lot of classmates who came from like IT or engineering background and wanted to pivot to finance, and nothing bad with that. The only place you can go wrong here is being hyper focused on only that specific path and not exploring other paths, and not even having that same strategy the way you have for your applications, right? Your dream job or your dream school versus your safety or your reach school, right? Having a similar strategy in job applications will be helpful. I knew people who focused so much on their career path, which was finance. They took all finance courses, failed to venture out into some of the other courses, and had a difficult time recruiting. One, because there are limited opportunities coming from an international background, given the visa situation and everything, and then just a lot of missed opportunities with not having that open mindset. But yeah, it's a long answer to the question you asked, but I think the biggest takeaway from GMAT and all the interview, all the application prep, translating into the MBA journey and beyond is, one, having that strategic mindset to approaching problems. Second, keeping an open mind, right? Pivoting quickly, as I've always been saying, right? And, coming from an entrepreneurship background, it was easier for me than somebody who's coming from a more traditional background, I would say. But pivoting quickly if things are not working for you, trying out different things, and then, just capitalizing on whatever opportunities are there for you.
Right. This was amazing. Thank you so much, Murtaza, for sharing all your suggestions to all the future aspirants. And is there any final message that you would like to give to all the viewers watching this video?
Believe in yourself, right? If you are on this journey already, whether you are halfway there or whether you just started, it doesn't matter. Believe in yourself.
Right.
As long as you are moving in the right direction, right? Whether it's just, improving your test scores by like 10 points on test over test or 20 points, right? It doesn't matter. As long as you are moving in the right direction, you will get there. And, that's just something to keep in mind, that eventually if you continue the pace you are on,
Yes.
you will get there. And then you have all these resources available to help, right? So don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it is through your counselor or reaching out to anybody else who's been through that journey, like myself. And a lot of people will be happy to help, and you'll be surprised with how much support you'll get out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for giving us your time and interviewing with us. I'm sure your suggestions are going to help a lot of students in their journey to success.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Yep. You too. Bye.
Yep. Bye.